Can you tell the difference between these two coffees?
Probably not, just by looking at them.
And yet, one was ground frozen, the other was ground at room temp.
I'm Ben,
I'm John.
and that's exactly what we're here to talk to you about today, answering the age-old question, is it a good idea to freeze your coffee? Why or why not?
So as we move through, be sure to send us your questions in the chat. And what do you think, Ben?
Let's dive in.
Cool. Sounds fun.
Basically, we're covering two hypotheses here in our coffee seminar today. The first,
When done correctly, freezing coffee helps preserve coffee's peak brewing condition. That's number one.
and the second is that grinding frozen coffee can actually improve the consistency of the particle sizes in your grounds. So we're going to kind of do a little testing for both of those hypotheses and see what we come up with today.
Let's see what happens. So first, does grinding actually, with frozen coffee rather, does grinding improve results with regard to grind size consistency?
So I was actually doing a little bit of experimentation with this yesterday, and actually, Brian, if you can throw those microscope pics back up there for just a quick second. These pictures I took yesterday after grinding frozen coffee and coffee that was at room temperature. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to tell visually that there's any sort of distinction between these two coffees here.
Now, someone much smarter than me could probably figure it out, but it just kind of looks like particles right up close. But did you take any kind of a particle analysis or anything like that?
Oh, I sure did, yes. We also have particle analysis testing results for coffee ground frozen and coffee ground at room temperature. So let's take a look at one of those graphs first, and we'll see what we got here.
Cool, let's check it out. All right, now this one is the frozen coffee, is that right?
That's correct.
All right, yeah, it looks to me like we have a good amount of particles below 200 microns, and we have a lot of particles in the 2 to 425 range, kind of all clumped together. I like what I'm seeing there. And then there's some outliers. There's always going to be that, in the 425, not too many in the 850 range there. And then what else do we have? We've got the one for there we go. Ben, what do you see in here?
So here's the particle distribution chart for the coffee that we ground at room temperature. And as you can see, it's a lot more widespread, the different sizes of particles that we're getting. We have fewer that are in the fines range, under 200 microns, and quite a lot more that are above 425. And so given that both of the grinder that I used to grind both of these coffees was dialed in for an espresso size, kind of liking what we see with the frozen coffee a little bit more here. Is that not right, John?
Yeah, and I was seeing some closer to the 1,180 micron range, parts that we would call boulders in that last one with the unfrozen coffee as well. So I liked what I was seeing with the frozen coffee where they were much closer together. You're never going to get just one right down the middle. It's just
Sure.
not how grinding works, at least not yet. But
And granted, we'll just qualify here that this was not a test that would have stood up under harsh scientific scrutiny. I did one round of grinding and just sort of compared those results. If we wanted to really test this, I would have needed a much larger sample size and to do a lot more rounds of this, which I unfortunately just did not have the time to do. But based on what we're seeing here, we can sort of conclude that grinding frozen coffee does make more consistent grounds. But you don't just have to take our word for it.
yeah, this is kind of becoming an industry thing anyway. A lot of people are taking advantage of freezers for that ground particle consistency. One of the best examples that I know of is Proud Mary Coffee in Portland, Oregon. They're kind of becoming industry leaders. Really cool company. Check this out. We've got an image up on the screen for you right here. They have a custom-built freezer for their hoppers, where all the coffee sitting in those hoppers is inside that freezer, and then below it, that's where the actual grinders are. So, I wouldn't recommend doing this at home. They had that custom built, but they're doing this so that every coffee that they serve can be ground even better and have even better particle consistency. So, don't take it from us, I guess.
Well, and Proud Mary is widely considered to be one of the most up and coming, highest quality coffee roasters in the country at this point. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, they're folks that I trust. Their coffee is fantastic, and their sourcing models are fantastic. The science that they use is fantastic. So, this is a classic. Don't take it from us.
So I guess the moral of that story is give it a shot at home. freeze your coffee before you grind it, and we'll talk a little bit more later about proper methods for freezing your coffee so you don't accidentally do it wrong. But we'd love to hear from you if you give us a shot, what your results are. And we'd also love to hear your questions. So just remember, as we keep going here, if you have anything pop into your head, just get that into the chat so we can answer that for you.
Awesome. So does freezing coffee actually preserve the peak brewing conditions? Let's dive into that a little bit. What do you think?
That sounds wonderful.
Nice.
So let's talk first about what peak brewing conditions are. A lot of people talk about coffee freshness, but that's actually not exactly the right word to use if you're talking about brewing coffee at its best.
Sure, yeah. The freshest coffee that you can imagine right after it's roasted, that's not when you want to brew it. Coffee's degassing all this CO2 at a pretty rapid rate after it was roasted for several days. So, if you've got coffee emitting all this gas and just pushing gas out, you're never going to get water in properly. It's just pushing it all away. So that's why right after roasting is not really ideal, both for espresso and drip methods.
We actually have a graph here that we can show that will sort of help illustrate just a little bit what it looks like as your coffee ages and moves from being just roasted into like really stale. You don't want to be drinking this anymore. So this is our how much do you want to drink the coffee graph. And as you can see, right after roast, we're still sort of moving in the right direction. We're degassing, getting rid of some of that CO2 that's going to create the best optimal brewing conditions. And then depending on who you ask or what your personal preferences are, anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks after roast date is generally considered to be like your peak brewing conditions, when your coffee will give you the best results in your cup. And then it's all downhill from there. And you get to coffee that's been hanging out for up to a year, and you're losing a lot of the inherent natural qualities that are going to make that coffee have really good flavor for you.
Yeah, especially the aromatics. That's
Yes.
that's one of the biggest thing that's going to disappear over time, and you really want those aromatics because smell is like 98% of taste. So if you can hang on to those aromatics for even longer, then that's how you're going to get your best coffee. Which means like maybe we should go into what the coffee killers are if we haven't
Yes.
talked about this yet.
So yeah, before we get into exactly like whether or not freezing your coffee works, let's do that and talk about what causes your coffee to deteriorate and how freezing might maybe prevent some of that.
Awesome.
Slide.
Sounds good. Let's go. All right, number 1, exposure to oxygen or just air is what we like to say. That's a coffee killer. Think of it like this. You ever bite into an apple and you leave it on the counter for a little while and then you come back and it's brown and then it just doesn't really kind of taste the same? That's oxidation. That's what oxygen is doing to a lot of things. You mentioned earlier actually.
Avocados.
Avocados. Yeah. Really, really great example. So the same thing is happening to your coffee. So we just want to keep as much oxygen away from our beans as possible. The next one is going to be moisture. You don't want to get your coffee wet. That's not going to do anything good for your grinder. It's not going to do anything good for the cellular structure of the beans. That's going to be number 2. We don't want moisture, and we're going to talk about how to avoid moisture when it comes to freezing coffee as well. Next, we don't have light up here, but light is one. It's kind of tied to temperature. That's one of the reasons. So you want to get into temperature a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Temperature in and of itself is not going to actually cause your coffee to go stale, but it does increase or decrease the rate at which some of these other natural processes occur. So the hotter the environment is in which you're storing your coffee, the faster oxidation will occur, the more that the moisture will affect the quality of your beans, and the faster it will degas as well, which is another one, that just natural process of the CO2 leaving the beans after they've been roasted. That's going to progress a lot faster as well at a high temperature, which is sort of where the idea of freezing coffee comes into play. If you can lower the temperature enough, you can slow down some of these natural processes and allow your coffee to preserve its peak brewing condition for a little bit longer, which of course then is time is the last one. And there's no stopping that, right? That's going to go on no matter what you do. But hypothetically, that is our hypothesis, we can use freezing coffee as a way to slow these processes down and prevent it from going stale so quickly.
I like to think of it like a time capsule. You know?
Oh.
Yeah, we can just kind of freeze that coffee in that optimal moment in time.
Yes.
So I do want to get into just one quick thing after about all that. you will see some degassing inside of your frozen coffee bag. That's okay. But we'll talk more about that in just a little bit.
Yeah, you put your Ziploc bags in there, and then you come back a couple of days later, and they're bigger. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? Should we do some testing?
Let's do a taste test. Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of things here. This is a bag of our Crema Wave coffee that was roasted in April, and in April I put it in the freezer, and just yesterday we pulled it out. And this morning, we opened it up to dial in our grinder back here. So this is time capsule coffee from April of this year.
Yeah.
What do you have over there, John?
Right here, this is an unopened bag of our Crema Wave coffee, and this was roasted just in, this was
August.
Just in August, actually. Yeah, so this one's still pretty fresh. We haven't opened it yet. So we got one from April, about like 5 months ago, and then this one from just barely into last month. So,
You want to start with the August coffee?
yeah, let's start here. This is coffee that's never been frozen. We're opening it for the first time now,
Yes.
and it's still pretty fresh as well. So let's see how this goes.
And just a reminder, while John's getting that prepped, do you want to do this one?
Sure, I'll do this one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll swap here.
All right.
We'll answer some questions that you guys have as John is prepping this shot for us. Cool J77 asks, would you freeze a freshly roasted coffee on day one or wait a few days? John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would say you want to wait a little bit until it reaches that peak brewing condition before you toss that in the freezer, because that throwing it in the freezer will slow down that degassing process. And so when you pull it out again, it might not actually be in its peak brewing condition yet. So it would be better to wait until it is.
Right, I would agree. I have seen people freeze coffee on like day 2. You might get a whole lot of degassing going on inside of that bag. So that might just be something to keep in mind.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe if you have it in like with a one-way valve in there, that could allow some of that degassing to occur. That might be a way to offset some of that pressure that you're going to be building up.
Absolutely. Yeah, do we have, these have a one-way valve, right?
Yeah, so we have, our Crema Wave here. It's got it on the back. It's not quite as easy to see. I don't know if we've got a shot of this. Probably not. But right here, there
you
is
go.
a little valve. No, we're not going to be able to see it. That's all right.
Oh, we tried,
But
man.
there is a valve here, trust me, I promise. And there's just 2 little holes that allow the CO2 given off by the coffee as it sits in the bag to pass out of the bag without allowing any of the oxygen from the environment to get into the bag. So that's going to be the best way. You want that one-way traffic as far as gases are concerned, so you don't get oxygen in your bag and you allow the CO2 to degas.
Now, the other benefit that you get out of that is you can actually kind of test the smell of the coffee before you buy it. If you go to your favorite coffee roaster or even a grocery store, check it out.
Yeah, I see people doing that in the grocery store. All right, so we've got our shot prepped here. And this is our August coffee, so fresh,
Right.
Not the freshest, but in its peak brewing condition, right, according to our little graph there.
All right.
And we're going to see what we taste here.
Let's let it rip. Let's see what we got.
Ooh, we got it.
I'm a little fine. but
Maybe
that's
just
okay.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I can do another one. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and get one prepped. This one's going to be a little bit.
Yeah, I'll take care of that once
Sure.
once we're all done here.
Yeah.
We'll see how far it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like we're going to be a little closer to like the 40-second range. I like my espressos around like that 28, 30-second range.
It looks like we might be closer to 40 on this one.
Yeah, that's okay. That happens sometimes. It's all part of the dialing in process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I'm going to be really interested in if we have different pulls and different times and all that.
That's a really good point, right? Because ostensibly, when we freeze our coffee, we're preserving the CO2 or stopping the degassing process for the most part. So we should have pretty similar results there in terms of what we're getting out.
Right, yeah, we're going to find out together. We haven't done this experiment yet. I get a good feeling of what's going to happen here, though.
While you're pouring that, we got another question here from Mr. L. Marks. Would you vacuum pack in 2 to 3 day use? I believe the question you are asking is whether you would vacuum pack doses of 2 to 3 days at a time, like all together. So you take it out and you've got 2 to 3 days of coffee.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
That is actually a great idea to do. You don't want to do too much more than that because once you've frozen your coffee, once removed from the freezer, its shelf life is going to be a little shorter. So doing 2 to 3 days at a time, as long as you make sure that you thaw it properly after taking it out of the freezer, should be good to go.
Absolutely. That's going to be one of the big things, is just making sure everything is thawed properly. If you're going to be using just one dose of coffee, then you don't really need to thaw it. You can just go straight into the grinder, and that's kind of what we were talking about with grinding frozen coffee. But if you're gonna have several days worth of coffee, you do want to make sure that it's all thawed before you actually brew with it, or before you even open the bag, for that matter.
Yeah, and the reason for that is when you put the coffee in the freezer, the outside of the bag is going to get some condensation on it. And then the beans are dry inside. As soon as you open that bag up, it's going to just suck that moisture in and sort of undo all of the protecting your beans that you were doing by putting them in the freezer in the first place.
Oh yeah, it's going to suck all that moisture out of the air, and you're going to get it right on your beans. And what's a coffee killer?
Moisture.
Moisture.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great question. And you also mentioned vacuum sealing is a really great alternative to just using a Ziploc bag. If you have a vacuum sealer at your house, that's going to be the best way to make sure that you don't have oxygen getting all involved with your coffee beans while it's in your freezer.
Right. Yeah, and another point I would like to add is make sure that you're grabbing about 3 to 5 days worth of coffee. There we go, check it out.
Much nicer, there
Nice.
we go.
Okay, now we're talking. Make sure you grab about 3 to 5 days worth of coffee. You don't want to go more than that per bag, right? So if you seal like a full 5-pound bag, thank you. Mm-hmm. If you seal like a full 5-pound bag, then you're gonna be you're not gonna really get through that coffee until maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And after you freeze coffee, that sort of degrades how long it's gonna stay good for. So that's the only caveat with freezing coffee. So, but anyway.
Let's try our fresh Crema Wave here.
Here we go.
Our optimal brewing conditions for Crema Wave anyways.
Right. This is our fresh one.
Yep, get that almond.
Yep.
A little sweet at the end.
Yep, still got that honey flavor.
Absolutely.
See how much crema was on there too?
You might say a whole wave.
Oh, please. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll be here all week, guys.
Well, what do you think? You want to try the one that we froze?
Yeah, that's nice. Let's do a frozen one. You want
Nice.
to swap out and I'll prep
Yeah.
this one?
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent.
I'll get you mildly set up here. What do you think?
What a sweetheart.
Oh,
This
stop.
guy.
All right, let's check out some more questions here while Ben's working on this. First of all, I see PDX represent. That's right. So would you freeze a freshly roasted coffee? Okay, I'm glad you got through that. Reusable.
Yeah, I think we got through all of them, actually.
Okay, yeah.
But, you know.
Reusable vacuum sealed bags. I meant to bring that up. I've been finding vacuum sealers for like $60, and I've even seen like coffee people post about the kind of vacuum sealer that they bought. You know, I found one for $45 the other day. It'll work just fine. So, you know, if you want, you can even, we like to dose 18 grams of coffee for espresso most of the time. You can even dose 18 grams in your vacuum sealer, throw that in the freezer, open it up when it's time to make an espresso, and then you can get it as fresh as absolutely possible. And then you're grinding frozen anyway, so you'll end up with better particle consistency. So, have you ever experimented storing beans in vacuum bags or canisters versus flushing with inert gases such as argon? I'm glad you brought that up. I've heard of a lot of roasters flushing their bags with nitrogen, and just to get the oxygen out. Nitrogen's going to be another one of those like inert gases that doesn't really have an effect on too much of anything. As far as the vacuum bag or canister, I actually do have right here. This is called the Fellow Atmos, and
Love that thing.
Yeah, you have one.
I
don't
do.
you?
I have one at home, and I use it all the time. I store my
Nice.
coffee in there.
Yeah, so all you do is this, and that sucks all the air out of there. And you'll see a little tab that goes in. And when that goes in, that's how you know that you've sucked as much air out as possible without breaking the plastic. So one thing that I really like is to freeze coffee, and then when you open that bag, after it's thawed out, very important, when you open that bag, use what you need to use. Get yourself one of these, a Fellow Atmos, and put the rest in here. Because as we said, when you freeze coffee, it's gonna, instead of having a good 7 days to 6 weeks with that optimal temperature or optimal flavor, it's gonna really only give you like 5 good days of optimal flavor. So you can do this to kind of extend that and get rid of some of the oxygen that's gonna make it degrade quicker. If you get the clear one, be sure to put it in the cabinet so you're keeping light away from it, because again, light is one of the coffee killers.
But they do make a black one, which is the one that I have.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I don't have to worry about that.
Nice.
Here
Got
you
another
are,
one?
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Lots of crema on here. Cheers.
All right, cheers. Thanks for brewing. All right.
I do not discern a difference in taste. I'm still getting,
I'm getting the exact same thing.
yeah, still getting the almonds, still getting the honey.
Your crema on there looked like pretty much exactly the same as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Look at that.
Check it out. I have a surprise for us.
Oh,
We have 18 grams.
a surprise for me.
For you.
Oh,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have.
We have 18 grams of frozen coffee over there. You wanna see if we can brew some of that up and see what the flavor differences are between these 2 shots and that one?
That sounds great. Yeah, so this coffee actually, we took out of the freezer not 15 minutes ago. So it is still in its frozen condition. So we're just gonna see if that has any impact on the flavors we're able to discern. I'm just gonna check to make sure. Okay, no, I was a little bad at dosing these when I did this, 6 months ago or whatever. So we're gonna get a couple more beans in there.
Yeah, you've had those in the freezer for what, a good 5 or 6 months or so?
Yeah, they went in April.
Wow.
So these have been frozen since April, since they were in their peak brewing condition.
Wow.
And now we get to.
So you were really thinking ahead for this live stream.
Well, full disclosure, I wrote a blog on this, which you can read on our website if you are so inclined. All about just basically what we're going over here, why you might want to freeze your coffee, and what the benefits of doing so are, and how to do it properly.
Hey, you know what? Faith and Bean wants to know, such a beautiful looking machine, how much are they? This is called the Profitec Drive. It's a dual boiler machine. It's got the flow control on here and dual PID, so you can really control both of the boilers. You can set the temperature of each boiler. Love that. These run about around the 32 to 3,500 range, depending on what kind of bells and whistles you add onto it. Yeah. How we looking?
Looking pretty good.
I'm very excited to try this one because this one is the one that was still frozen. Mm-hmm. And if theory proves correct, we're going to have better particle consistency, so a better grind altogether.
That's what I'm hoping.
Nice. We are also using the Eureka Mignon Oro today. It's a single dose grinder. And I love this grinder because it's actually got bigger burrs than a lot of the other home grinders. 65 millimeter burrs in general. The bigger the burr size, the better your particle consistency. And it also helps with things like the grinder heating up too much. That motor doesn't have to work quite as hard to get that burr spinning really fast. And it's got hardened burrs on the inside, which is not how a lot of those burrs come, actually. So those are actually going to cut harder and more precise, and they're going to last longer as well. So it's a good investment, too.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying using this on our stream today. And it looks like we're getting pretty good
Nice.
out here, coffee. So we can go ahead and try this out now.
Nice.
Looks
Cheers.
pretty much the same as the other ones.
Oh, yeah.
Got plenty of crema, came out nice.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if this is just me or I took a sip differently, but it feels smoother for some reason.
Yeah, I'm getting way more sweetness in this. Now we're pulling shots pretty quick today. The Crema Wave is kind of a medium to dark roast, so I don't like too much time with those darker roasts. So we're kind of doing like these 21 to 25 second shots with those darker roasts. If you enjoy darker roasted coffee, try a lower time and see what that does. You can also lower your temperature. But anyway,
That's really nice.
This tastes fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, and not personally a huge straight espresso drinker. I like to mix it with milk myself, but these are good. These taste nice.
The last time we did one of these taste test live streams, you really went out on a limb for me. I appreciated that. You were just drinking straight espresso. And
My conversion has begun. Okay, so I think that I'm comfortable saying here at this point that if you freeze your coffee correctly, it is going to help you maintain its peak brewing conditions for longer. I did not notice a difference between the more fresh and frozen coffees here, so it seems like a good idea.
Yeah. No, I was getting much more smoothness and sweetness on that one. And if that's not enough, check out that particle consistency graph.
Yeah.
It's a classic proof is in the pudding, and we're seeing this trend happen a lot more often. I think even more than just Proud Mary Coffee in Portland is doing that more frozen options, especially with those higher grade coffees. The ones that they really want to preserve and protect and prepare them really well because they cost a pretty penny.
Yeah. So, okay, then before we let people go home and try this for themselves, let's talk about how you do this correctly. Like, what are the ways in which you can freeze coffee at home that are going to result in kind of the same results that we have going on here?
Yeah, we touched on some of this a little bit, but let's really go deeper here. So you can freeze the whole bag. We did talk about that. You want the bag to be sealed. You want it to be unopened, right? It's got to have that one-way degassing valve. Very important, because even when it's in the freezer, it will still degas. So I'm told that you have to get to like negative 75 Celsius, which would be around like 170 something Fahrenheit, negative 100 and something Fahrenheit.
Yeah, your standard home freezer is not going to be able to get cold enough to completely stop degassing or oxidation or anything like that, which is why it's still really important to make sure that you don't have any air in the bags that are your coffees in when you put them in your freezer.
Right, yep. So that's for freezing the whole bag. You can also freeze pre-measured portions, right?
Yep, sort of just like what we did here back in April. I took some Ziploc bags. I measured out my doses poorly, but you could do a better job measuring than I did. Put them in here, and you'll notice like there is a little bit of like air in here. When I did this, I sealed these up, I smoothed them out, I got as much of the air out as possible. So it has been degassing a little bit, in the freezer over these past 5 months or however long it's been since April.
I would expect some degassing, yeah.
So then the idea is, you just pull this out, and just like I just did, pop it in your grinder, grind yourself up your dose, and you're good to go. Now, if we're going to freeze whole bags, like John was just saying, it's important that we remember to let those thaw overnight before we open them up, because you're just going to get all that moisture in there, and it's going to mess up your preserved coffee beans.
Yeah, the cold beans are going to react with room temperature air and cause condensation on the beans. That's the part we don't want, so don't open it until it's at room temperature. That's why I like to say, just take it out of the freezer the night before, and then you can open the whole bag in the morning. You should be thawed out by then. It'll be okay. I have a couple of tricks about the single dosing.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
Or using Ziploc bags, if you're not single dosing. But I've even seen people take a little straw, put it in the Ziploc bag, suck the air out. It's a little silly, but it gets all the air out. I've even used a vacuum cleaner, just a little tiny hole at the top of my Ziploc, and just suck the air out. Try not to get any beans.
Yeah.
So we do have a quick question before we keep going. So to clarify, if I portion in single dose bags, should I thaw? No. Well, you know what? Let me clarify. You can. You'd want to make sure it's totally thawed out. But if it's a single dose, go ahead and take advantage of that increased grind particle consistency that you get when you have frozen coffee. So just throw that thing right in the grinder, and you're going to get even better grind particles. Totally okay to wait and thaw it out. But if it's a single dose, just go ahead and take advantage of that extra perk with
Yeah.
frozen coffee.
Why wait?
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? We got some other tips, tricks, things like that?
I unfortunately am tapped as far as my knowledge of frozen coffee and freezing coffee and all of that is concerned.
I'm seeing roasters even freeze green coffee and things like that too. So that's entirely possible.
Yeah, we'll maybe do another coffee seminar on green coffee freezing at some point.
That's going to be a whole different thing. Yep.
Well, this has been a little bit of a short seminar today, but why stuff it with fluff when we've got all the good information out there? So thank you guys so much for joining us. Really hope you guys try this at home. And if you do, like I said, just let us know. You can give us a call, send us an email, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, please do. Would love to hear from you. And keep an eye on the seminar schedule. And we're going to be doing these weekdays from 2 to 3 for maybe another day or two. All right. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm Ben.
And we hope you'll try freezing coffee at home.
He's John.
I'm John.
We'll see you next time, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.